The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Ribble Valley, everybody, for the third instalment in the series. Now, in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about a much bigger village than the two we've seen already. In this one, we're going to be talking a bit about milling. There's going to be a bit of Roman history to talk about, and we're going to see a couple of interesting pubs. This is the village and the parish of Mellor. Mellor, Bald Hill. After exploring two of the smaller villages in Ribble Valley over the last couple of days, it's time we had a go at a bigger one, a place with a lot more stuff that makes it more village-like. On the other side of the A59 from the area we've been looking at so far is the large community known as Mellor. It has a population well in excess of 2,000. The name Mellor is first mentioned in around 1130, a considerable time after the Domesday Book was compiled. This sort of makes sense when you realise what Mellor means. Its first recorded form was Mulver, with forms such as Muller appearing thereafter. Its origin lies in the common Brittonic words which survive in modern Welsh, such as mole. It means bare hill, implying that in those days this was nothing more than just an open natural landscape. Since then, it's been heavily built upon. Modern-day Mellor has two churches, one Church of England, the other Methodist, as well as a primary school, 3 pubs and a hotel. In addition, there's also a post office and general store and a high-quality butcher's shop. Mellor also has some disused quarries and the remains of an eel farm that was destroyed by fire in the 1990s. Atop the highest hill on Mellor Moor overlooking the village is the site of a Roman signalling station and a disused Royal Observer Corps nuclear blast and fallout monitoring station. The monitoring post was opened in July 1959 and it's situated on a low mound that overlooks the former Samlesbury airfield. This is a lot more like it now, isn't it? We've got lots more to go at. Let's have a wander around and see it all. We begin our walk at the eastern end of Mellor and generally speaking we'll be heading west throughout the village, save for the end part when we form a complete circle using Mellor Lane. On Mellor Lane is our first landmark. It's a pub called the Traders Arms. Pubs in this area so far have been pretty difficult to research, and I'm afraid the Traders Arms is no exception to that rule. I've no idea if this has had any previous names and couldn't even find a date of construction. One thing I do know though is that the Traders Arms is well known for one main reason: the wonderful views it offers over the Lancashire countryside. Like the Bay Horse at Osbaldeston, it's a Thwaites pub. It offers an excellent range of drinks and all its food is homemade, locally sourced wherever possible. It's managed by Lindsay Clark, who took it over in 2022. On second thoughts, maybe I didn't do too bad with this one after all. The pub is both our start and finish point, and across the road from it we have a chapel and its associated graveyard. This was originally for the Wesleyans, and Mellor was quite the local hotbed for Methodism. John Wesley himself visited and preached in Mellor several times in the early days of the Methodist movement in the mid-1700s. Now part of the West Pennine Moors Methodist Circuit, this chapel was originally founded in the 1700s, but of course this building is far newer than that. This building replaced the old chapel some years back now, enabling the modern Methodist congregations to continue worship. The Methodist Church enjoys a close relationship with the Anglican Church elsewhere in the village, as well as the local primary school. Speaking of schools, it has a small but growing Sunday school, which meets on a monthly basis. Other societies that use the building include a music group, who meet here once a month on the first Monday at 7 p.m. A coffee and cake session is also held monthly for all, and it usually takes place on the last Saturday of every month. Okay, so the Methodist Church is just one communal venue you can find here in Mellor. There's another one that's not too far away. It's literally just over the road. It's the Village Hall. Now this has got a very interesting backstory. Let's tell it. Hopping over the road again takes us to the Village Hall, where more local activities take place. In its time, Mellor Village Hall has seen things like line dancing, disco parties and exercise classes. The hall also functions as the community centre for the village, where residents can go to discuss how to improve the local area. This building has been at the heart of the Mellor community since 1978. Its story, though, began 2 years earlier in 1976, when a festival to mark the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977 was organised. The festival was held on a 3-acre site in the centre of Mellor. We are currently stood on the edge of that very piece of land. The landowner at the time had leased it to the parish council for recreational purposes, and it was operated by a newly formed sports and social club. The club set up a football pitch, 2 tennis courts, a car park and a second-hand prefabricated building for indoor activities. I guess you could call that the original Village Hall. Following the festival, though, it was clear that the prefab structure was far from adequate for long-term use. Fundraising efforts were then started in order to get a new hall built. In November 1977, the Manpower Services Commission, or MSC for short, were assigned the task of building it, providing the trades needed from the unemployed register. It wasn't quite as easy as that in reality. The structural design of the building had to be changed from its original brick box plan to a steel-framed construction instead. During the first phase, an underground watercourse was found which flooded the site. The weather was atrocious too, and the quality of tradesmen provided by MSC left much to be desired. No building is ever quite finished, so they say, and even today, Mellor Village Hall has issues. That said, by the end of 1985, it was probably the best village hall in the Ribble Valley. As for the rest of that 3-acre site, that's still the same. Both the playing field and the tennis court still prove very popular in the summer. Let's cross this towards a residential area next. The playing field quite soft this morning because it was raining yesterday, so obviously it's basically saturated at the moment, but got across it via a footpath that was a little bit muddy, and now we find ourselves into a residential area. Haha. Now this is a huge residential area. It takes up quite a lot of the southern part of Mellor, and as we walk around this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mellor's industrial past and how it came to be the village it is right now. Get used to seeing this sort of thing in these southern areas of the village. Most of Mellor's main landmarks are in the north of the settlement, whilst the south is a glut of housing. Less than 70 years ago, these housing estates would simply not have existed. Mellor was originally a linear village, and Mellor Lane was the main route from east to west. From north to south, a road connected the centre of the village, where the Milstone pub is today, with a minor lane that runs to the south of these estates. Today, we know that road as Church Lane. This area was alternatively titled Hob Green, and it was all fields. Today, Mellor's local populace is generally middle class and middle-aged, although the tranquil rolling hills and tight sense of community have made it a prime retirement location. That means, in a very broad sense, a visit to Mellor means you're unlikely to see gangs of youths on every street corner. The crime rate should be pretty low as well. That's a bonus. That's not to say there isn't any here, it just makes Mellor a place that's less likely to have those sorts of issues. In any event, this was a pleasant estate of mainly bungalows, and right in the middle of it all, you'll come to Mellor's main shopping precinct. I think it's fair to say, as shops go, Mellor can't exactly compare itself to a large town. That said, what it has is probably enough for the population. This small run of shops includes a general store, a post office and a hairstylist. When you consider many folk who live here have jobs outside of Mellor, this is likely all it really needs. The post office used to be historically on that road that linked the centre of Mellor to the road south of Hob Green. This route won't pass the old post office, but the building it occupied does still exist. It's number 6A, Church Lane. Mellor used to be a thriving hive of industry, a feat that's more than a little remarkable, given that, as a village, it probably didn't exist in a formal sense until the late 18th century. Remember, this was a bare hill. That's what Mellor means. Mellor's early inhabitants were called Mellorpoots or Mellorites and farmed the land around the village during the Industrial Revolution. Soon, though, this was replaced by hand-loom weaving and spinning, which featured greatly in Mellor cottage life. This tied in nicely with the development of the Lancashire textile industry, and it could be said that Mellor first became a cohesive village in around 1780 thanks to weaving. Soon, cottages were built to accommodate a rapid influx of population. Many children from a workhouse on Mellor Moor were apprenticed to work with the weavers. However, this prosperity was short-lived. Mechanised mills in Blackburn would replace the craft in time, and the last piece of hand-woven cloth from Mellor was made in 1890. It suffered such a severe population decline after that many of its original cottages were then deserted. As spinning and weaving ceased to be cottage industries and the work went increasingly to mills containing power looms, Mellorites became angry at the change, many joining the Luddite movement. Ralph Miller, the village blacksmith, went so far as to produce pike for use in the Luddites' fight against the installation of power looms, which many thought would take away their living. The ups and downs of Mellor were noted in the late Victorian age by the village's redoubtable vicar, Reverend G.R.G. Pugh. He described it back then as a place that was fast becoming a deserted village. There was only one saving grace, and ironically, it was Mellor's own power loom shed. In 1878, Elswick Mill was opened. It was owned and managed by the Smalley family, who, along with the mill, created rows of terraced housing for its workers. This helped to stem the decline, though by the time of its closure in 1960, the transformation of Mellor into a virtual suburb of Blackburn was complete. By that time, Mellor was receiving modern services such as a reliable water supply and public transport. Yeah, you see what I mean? Quite a big residential area, and everything you've seen there is nowhere near all of it. There's a lot of houses in Mellor these days. Now we've arrived outside the library. That is the next thing on our list. There's a library just there, and there's a little play area, park behind it, and you can see the spire of the church behind them both. Those are all next. Across Lancashire, every library is now a designated warm space designed to support residents during the winter months. They provide people with somewhere to keep warm, access information and advice, or spend time with others. Remember, Mellor is a village that's populated these days by a lot of retired folks. These are the people that warm spaces benefit the most. It's a good thing then that Mellor Library is no exception to the county-wide rule. Mellor's Anglican Church is dedicated to St Mary the Virgin, and it's a Grade 2 listed building. It was originally a commissioner's church, having received a grant towards its construction from the Church Building Commission. St Mary's is relatively modern, having been built between 1827 and 29 to a design by Thomas Rickman and Henry Hutchinson. It was restored and altered somewhat in 1897, 98 and 99 by Austin and Paley, who created a chancel by raising the east end and adding furnishings for the choir. It's mostly sandstone, although it has a slate roof. Its plan consists of a 6-bay nave with a clerestory and a continuous chancel, north and south aisles, and a west tower. The tower is in 3 stages with angle buttresses. Inside, the font is in white marble and has a carved cover including a pyramid-shaped spire with angels on it. The stained glass windows in the south aisle are by Copronier and date from the latter half of the 19th century. There's also a window in the north aisle dated 1928, and that's by Whitefriars. Daniel Thwaites, once the lord of the manor, gave the land this church stands on, and is also responsible for its first peal of bells. The churchyard contains some 16 Commonwealth war graves, 10 belonging to those who served in World War I and 6 from World War II. And here's a fun fact for you. This church has in the past been a literal hive of activity. Some years ago, the roof was found to contain bees. This wasn't a problem for honey lovers though, because several pounds of it were extracted from the rafters. The church isn't the only building in Mellor with St Mary's in its name. The title is also used by the Church of England School on Brundhurst Fold just over the road. Mellor's school history was a little scant and hard to find. However, we already know that Mellor Brook provided the village with a school from 1869 onwards, thanks to our efforts in Balderston earlier this week. One assumes that when that closed in 1962 and then became the Mellor Brook Community Centre, children were transferred to this school. This would make sense given the classic 1960s look of these school buildings. Okay, we're at the top of Church Lane now, and if you turn left, you're then on Mellor Brow, which goes down into Mellor Brook, which we've already seen. It was in the Balderston episode a couple of days ago. Now, this area around here all bears reference to the former mill that used to be in Mellor, Elswick Mill. A lot of places around here have that Elswick name in them, including these sort of areas just here, because there's an Elswick Lodge to the right. I believe that house there is Elswick something, I'm not totally sure what, but this is where the mill was. As it turns out, the building in shot now is Elswick Lodge. Elswick Mill would have dominated this part of the village. It was huge. Old OS maps from the 1900s show the extent of the site, and it was larger than the present area of the church, churchyard and primary school combined. Evidence for its existence is scant, other than the obvious street names like Elswick Gardens and Elswick Lodge, but Mellor Brow offers the best clue. The row of terraced houses for the workers, which ran alongside the mill, still stands. The unbroken chain of housing is practically unmissable as you drive into the village from Mellor Brook. Okay, so after exploring that little area, we are now heading up back towards the car again. But there's still a couple of things to see, including this pub here, which is actually more of a hotel than a pub. It's called the Milstone, which is appropriate considering it's dead opposite where Elswick Mill used to be. Now we're at the northwestern corner of the village and we're outside our second pub. This is the Millstone, and it's an apt name, that. It dates back to the 17th century and was originally a coaching inn set at the foot of the serene Ribble Valley. It's since become a hotel and is still serving visitors to the village today, as well, of course, as those who live here. According to its own website, it has heartwarming hospitality, home-cooked AA rosette food made from scratch by its chefs, and a range of modern boutique bedrooms. Dogs are always welcome at the Millstone too. On the walk back to the start, we passed by Mellor's local butchers, Frank Littler and Sons. Frank was a Blackburn market trader, and until 2011, his family had been working there since the 1860s. He was one of many stallholders who opted not to move to the Blackburn Mall shopping centre, which opened in that year. He still has this local shop, though, in Mellor. So, after a walk around Mellor, it's fair to say there's lots to be interested by, right? Well, there's more. Okay, we are at the end of the route. I've stopped my Strava and that has completed a circuit around Mellor, but you'll notice I'm still walking because just beyond where I parked near the Traders Arms there's a footpath which runs up here, and to finish off we're going to take a walk to something called the Mellor Millennium Viewpoint, and it's got quite a bit of history to talk about. Let's go and check it out. Just outside Mellor, you'll find a track on the left-hand side. You can follow this to the Mellor Millennium Viewpoint, and what a view this is, by the way. We shouldn't be surprised by that. Mellor is, after all, a hilltop village, and it was originally called Mole, from the Celtic word for a small, round-topped hill. That hill is 733 feet above sea level and overlooks the panoramic Ribble Valley. Standing as it does in such a prominent position, Mellor was ideal for a Roman signalling station. The ruins of that can be found up here on Mellor Moor. Near them are the ruins of early Christian worship too. Legend has it that if you visit those and place an ear to the ground on Christmas Eve, the sounds of bells can be heard. Mind you, listening is what this part of the parish used to do best. The concrete structures that form the Millennium Viewpoint used to have a different purpose. These are the only outward signs of what used to be a large underground nuclear monitoring post for the Royal Observer Corps, which opened in 1959. It closed just 9 years later and has since been sealed. When in use, 3 men would have entered the post during times of potential nuclear attack and reported on explosions, read from special equipment installed to read blast pressure, power and flash. They would have stayed here for at least 2 weeks with no supplies from the outside world. The bunker, therefore, had its own source of power, ventilation, communications, sanitation, food and water. The monitoring post was just one of 1,500 across the country, which would be able to track and report any nuclear fallout, keeping the local population informed of the level of danger. Thankfully, they were only ever used for training and exercises. In the Second World War, an above-ground lookout post was built here too by the Royal Observer Corps for identifying and tracking both hostile and friendly aircraft flying over this part of eastern Lancashire. Finally, we have the Spread Eagle, far away from the main village now, on the road to Ramsgreave. In 2022, owner Rachel Andrews and her team spent 3 months sprucing the place up, perfecting the pub's interior and ensuring everything is in place to welcome customers back through its doors. The pub was taken over by Green King in January of that year and continues to operate under their Country Inn arm, chef and brewer. The beautiful spot it's located in overlooks the Ribble Valley and does a fabulous job of showing off the incredible walking paths nearby. Being dog-friendly, it's ideal for those who want a pint after a long walk with their four-legged friends. It's also a decent stop for those who walk around villages. I mean, I've no idea who that might be referring to. The Spread Eagle is at the top of Ramsgreave. Tomorrow we're heading down into the valley below to see what's at the bottom. Join me there for round 4 in the Ribble Valley. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.